Okay, welcome everyone to this Singapore FinTech Festival satellite event that we've been holding here in the offices of Standard Chartered Ventures. We're one of the panels for this afternoon focused on establishing a robust system for growth. My name is April McKenna. I'm the CEO of Autum, which is a venture incubated within SE Ventures, and we are helping people get ready to own their future, helping them set and achieve their goals in all aspects of their money life. On the panel today, I have three gentlemen who are part of the Autum ecosystem, if you like, and I'll shortly let them introduce themselves and also share what it means to establish a robust system for growth. So with that, David, I'll start with you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. David Isaac. I always like to start by saying I'm a fifth generation Singaporean, so all comments are prefaced by I'm one of us. So I am, I think, closest to a management consultant and a product guy. So I've always worked on special projects, literally since graduation and before graduation, creating, building, hands-on launching what's new to corporates. Did a mix of multi-continent strategy for Samsung's product innovation team, went to Ernst & Young to join the M&A team to do both the tricky art of valuing startups and innovation in 2017, trying to figure out what that meant. Went on there to lead innovation for ASEAN, including new business model design and venture building for EY. Had a brief stint as a chief growth officer at a public listed company, which was also a venture builder. Now I focus mainly on venture building, business model design for fintech, finance, C-suite advisory on what is a digital business model and why it's not different from strategy anyway. But we have nice new words to use, so we use them. And since 2014, working on spending our government's money, $1 billion a year, on launching and commercializing deep technology, patents and startups. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, and it's exciting to have an in-person event after all these last 2 years of being virtual. My name is Chetan Karkhanis. I'm the SVP of Digital Advisory and Wealth Management at Franklin Templeton. I'm not a fifth-generation Singaporean, but I'm a first-generation PR, so I'm still one of you. And I do have 17 years in Indonesia as credentials. So, by way of background, I've been in the financial services industry for over 20 plus years, primarily in the US, firms at Franklin Templeton, JP Morgan, Moody's, Schwab, and as you can tell, it's all financial services, all wealth management, and sell side practically. So I think I bring probably a rich background in that space, and I think it's an exciting panel to be part of to discuss, how to build robust, scalable businesses, not only within financial services, but broadly speaking as well. So happy to be here. Thank you, April.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Mark Dimmock. I didn't realize we'd be competing on Singapore credentials, but I am also a PR. So you can listen to what I have to say. So I'm part of the investment team at SE Ventures. Primary role is to work with the ventures, including Autum, on fundraising, M&A opportunities, etc. My background is all financial services, M&A, CFO roles as well, and I bring hopefully an interesting perspective to this topic. What's exciting to me about it is that it is very much flavor of the moment. I think it is very topical. So investors are no longer focused on growth at all costs. It's all about profitable growth, and I think we'll get into that today.
Absolutely. And yeah, in terms of competing, I've been in Singapore for 16 years and I'm also a PR. So Mark, you mentioned, what does establishing a robust system of growth mean to you? Perhaps David and Chetan, you could also just share your thoughts around that, just to sort of get the conversation going.
So this was not scripted at all. I haven't prepared a thing. Well, I like to start by defining what we're really talking about. Are we talking about corporate innovation to capture a new market opportunity? Are we talking about the parent itself, the person funding the corporate innovation? Is this part of the digital transformation? Is it part of new customer reach and engagement? Is it a part of dropping costs through operational transformation, making our employees' lives better? Is it a part, of new business model design? Are there new ways of making money through asset-light business models, through leveraging underutilized resources and advantages that the corporate has? I think that's the most exciting thing. And then you go into thinking about, is this core or non-core to the parent? Is it trying to capture something slightly further away from the core? That's also very exciting. And I think this is answered really by, do you want to grow in a certain way? Are you trying to lower costs? These are the things that keep me up at night. We make sure that these very simple, intuitive, obvious things are actually carried out because it's easier said than done.
I think what some of the things David mentioned, but let me give you a bit of background on what my role is. So as part of Franklin Templeton's fintech and innovation program, what we're trying to do as a corporate venture capital firm is effectively look at where the puck is heading and where we can disrupt a very traditional cash flow heavy business into new areas of growth for the firm. So as a traditional asset manager, as you can tell, we have a core business in producing products for clients for their investing and saving needs. Now, today, some of the questions David raised and April raised, what does building robust, scalable models mean? I think effectively it's about what do you want to build as a value proposition to the end client, and how is that going to exist as a corporate venture capital firm within the confines of your traditional business? Because at times it can often be conflicting and competitive, in fact, can cannibalize existing business lines altogether. If you look at the potential for technologies like blockchain, I think a quote by one of our competitors called the mutual fund an 80-year-old dinosaur in the asset management industry. So you can take that from him, but the sentiment is echoed, right? If you build robust, scalable business models, you have to have a pathway towards understanding what is the value proposition for that business model, and where can you let it grow without disrupting the core, but ultimately with an eye to disrupting the core, if that makes sense. So that's how we approach our fintech innovation lab and in our efforts here. We're investing in interesting companies that can help us grow long term, while also encouraging entrepreneurial spirit and innovation within the employee base in the short term.
Thanks, Chetan, and thanks, David. And I think what sits sort of the heart of all of that, which we've just been talking about, is sort of the client's centricity and putting the customer first. And I think if we look at traditional businesses, often in this space, they're very product-led, whereas there's definitely a shift towards being outcome-focused. So perhaps David, you could talk about your view on putting the customer needs and potentially their pain points as part of the approach to building a sustainable business and getting that value proposition super clear.
That was an easy one. Okay. Let's contextualize that, right? The C-suite, the leadership, they've got many, many good ideas. A lot of good ideas don't make money. Within all those ideas, which customer-centric insight do we prioritize, right? And then we've got to sequence many ideas that fulfill that outcome and that business opportunity. Then we've got to find the dependencies that exist, otherwise everybody would be doing this already, and then there would be no arbitrage, revenue opportunity for having any kind of innovation or startup. I think that's the first thing. And then within that customer centricity, that outcome that you're trying to build, that opportunity, that dollar that you're trying to capture, where in your overall value chain of your business and your industry, which customer are you trying to innovate for? Because yes, customer centric makes a lot of sense. Is the customer our business partners? Is the customer upstream or downstream from us? Is the customer actually a technology that we then co-monetize and take to market together using the gravity of the parent company? there's many parts of having a customer, and too many thoughts. I don't want to ramble, right? So I think that if you leverage all the corporate advantages, you can really be customer centric. The challenge is, yes, is this cannibalization of the core, right? Is this stepping on the toes of the parent business, and then does the corporate venture have to be at arm's length so it is protected from antibodies to innovation within the parent organization? Or is it something that's closer to R&D and it helps us either lower costs or increase margins, because the ability to price through being customer centric, through doing things that nobody else is doing, that's a nice thing to be able to sell in the market. We call it product market fit, but it's much more complex than that. But I think I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, Chetan, I think that sort of leads on nicely to sort of Franklin Templeton and then the innovation lab that you oversee, and how any tension between those two, or how you look at it from a customer-centric lens, particularly in the innovation lab.
Yeah, thanks, April. I think to date, the tension has been a good one. I mean, a lot of questions come up from the core business, if you will, on what is this business, how does it sit within even the client side of the business. But coming back to the point of client centricity and proposition, I think building a scalable business really has to be about, what is a problem you're trying to solve for, which is obvious. Where's a customer, which customer segments are you going to target? What kind of, are you going to approach the problem with technology or with a business model or with client service? Often people building scalable businesses. I think I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about Robinhood, for example. Great technology, but you can't ignore risk. You can't ignore client service. You can't ignore the fundamental proposition for why your prospects are coming to you, whether to use an app or to use a service. So there are multiple different angles where I think it's not just about the new technologies building on or offering something to the client proposition, but it's about the existing core also building it on its, for us, we're a 75-year-old company. We know risk management, we know client service, we know operations. There are elements that can go both ways. So getting engagement to be a two-way flow can, I think, help better define the client proposition at the end of the day.
Yeah, the leverage is super important, and I guess we see that in SC Ventures as well. We're able to lend on the bank's policies and processes and procedures in order to risk manage and provide good governance and control around the ventures that we're building. Mark, from an investor point of view, how does that play out in terms of customer centricity and the considerations?
So I guess clearly it's all about is the go-to-market strategy credible, and is there a model for scaling? Do you understand your costs? And let me come back to that. But we do look for an understanding of client behavior. Something I hear a lot about at the moment is product-led growth. This idea that if our product's good enough, it'll go viral. We don't need to have a sales organization. We don't need a commercial setup. That has worked for a few people, Zoom, Slack, etc. But if I hear about it in a enterprise sales context to a bank, I really think that's pretty simplistic. So you got to understand your customer behavior. Having then an understanding of your client acquisition costs that is tailored to those different segments. Customer acquisition cost to lifetime value is a classic but a goodie. The lifetime value though is pretty hard. If we're honest about it, there's a lot of variables that go into that. First thing would be really understanding the CAC, the variable cost, the fixed costs. As you scale, how's that going to go, etc.
And I think just to maybe just to stay with you, Mark, on we're living in a very VUCA world at the moment, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. From an and sort of from a fundraising point of view, very challenging for startups and ventures for this year, particularly to raise. What's your thoughts around that, and what do you think is most important to an investor right now?
I probably gave a bit of a preview up front. Clearly, the path to profitability is now top of mind. I think the implications are one, be ready to pivot. So you something that might have made sense when it was all about hitting those growth metrics, probably makes less sense now. So can you do a B2B proposition, etc. We're seeing that across many spaces. Back to the model for scaling and understanding your costs. I think that is a lot more important than it was. I think it's a bit of a red flag now to have the sort of vanity metrics of pure client growth. And look forward to questions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just keep an eye on time. So we're going through to 4:45. We'll probably wrap it up at around 4:30, 4:35, and then back to questions. David, I know you have some particular views around product-led growth. Perhaps you could share how that sort of feeds into some of the work you're doing with us in Autum to help us sort of, at the moment we're going through our product market fit testing, etc., and the frameworks that you're bringing into the consultancy side of things with the business.
Sure. So just to define product-led growth, it typically means that the front stage, the leading edge of your product is available often for free, in the sense that the customer gets to experience a lot of value for free, which then gets them ostensibly hooked into a paid experience. But that means that the entire product experience has to craft and do three different things that in companies are typically divided between marketing and manufacture product and sales and customer service and recovery, which is finding the acquisition, then delivering the experience and the benefit, which is right in the center, and then keeping them engaged. And for infrequent products such as insurance, different types of investments, these are things that we don't engage in on a daily basis. We don't make a transaction on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Some of them are yearly bases. How do you keep the person engaged? How do you continue to provide value? And if I can link it back to a VUCA environment, every time something changes, other people's business models break. That means, let's recycle value from the experience, let's recycle and reuse and renew customers in a sense, right? And cross-sell them, right? Other things that are broken. So if they want self-serve as part of their experience, give it to them. If they want to look at their portfolio at 2 a.m. rather than send an angry email to a financial advisor at 2 a.m., give it to them. If they want clarity on other opportunities in between insurance purchases or financial investments, I'm not talking about day traders, right? I'm talking about the average person, right? How does this all contribute to building a startup that will hit, $100 million valuation in 4 years, and hopefully a unicorn $1 billion valuation in 7 years? Because I authored a white paper that is the truth of the 101 decacorns and unicorns in Southeast Asia, up to data of 2018. And I think that in terms of product-led growth, it shouldn't be viewed as the opposite of business as usual. It shouldn't be viewed as a huge risk to the business or to profitability. It should be considered as all digital transformation has been considered, because digital is not a new thing, right? Think of how much time you spend online. That's not going to go away even with the metaverse or augmented reality, right? We live part of our lives online. Can the company exist and be there where you already are when you need it, and make sure that it's not the opposite of that experience, which is canceling meetings in the middle of the day to go to the bank to get a checkbook for that one company that insists on being paid by check, and queuing in the bank for an hour, for example. So I think product-led growth should be viewed as how we look at email or Excel today. They're tools, right? It's tools for the company to provide value to a customer.
you want to add anything to that, Chetan?
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with the comments. The only one point I would on product-led growth is that product still needs to stand for what is your core value proposition, because it's impossible to be all things to all people, and even investors struggle to use just one app or one service. So I just thought just to round out that point. When you look at business models, you can win on business models, but they have to be centered in their core value proposition. Who is the end client? What need you're trying to address for them? Coming to your question on volatility and uncertainty as an investor, what we have primarily focused on, and that too, Frank Templeton as a corporate venture capital, is technologies that can disrupt or at least keep us on our toes for the future, right? So whether that's blockchain, whether that's alternative data, AI, data analytics tools, and when you combine those kinds of technologies within a business model and then target them towards a client proposition, that's I think where we would see the most bang for our buck for investments. It's a difficult time right now. Obviously, valuations have contracted. The funding has become much more scrutinized even among financial investors, and we are not financial investors. We are first and foremost strategic investors in how we look at the investments for the long run. So for that to happen, I think we need to take a closer look at what are the synergies between the core business, again, and then driving back to the core, and how can we leverage a partnership or an investment for the future. So I think it comes back to, the environment has gotten tougher to make actionable models work, and to Mark's point, you need KPIs, you need to be tracking profitability, what's your runway, what's your path to profitability, but at the same time recognizing that these are young companies, startups, they need hand-holding, they need some guidance along the way, and to have a little patience along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, David, we've been speaking recently around leading indicators, and also your view on the CFO being a key partner to the business and the CMO in particular. So perhaps just want to elaborate on that a little bit, and then we'll go to the last question and we'll open up for some questions.
So one of the advantages of having digital acquisition and digital delivery as part of your overall go-to-market strategy, part of your overall business. I mean, ATMs are the original product-led growth in banking. They're self-serve, right? Think of it that way. So in terms of metrics, how do you know where to put an ATM, for example? How many ATMs do I have to put into the market to say that I have the most ATMs in the market? Of that, how many are really justified in high usage, right? High utility, right? It's not a bad thing, but to top up this ATM 4 times a day. That's a good thing. That means customers are getting strong value, right? This is part of my bank's ability to serve. Metrics are the same. Vanity metrics are far easier. Even good metrics are vanity metrics if they're not viewed in context of what you're actually trying to do. So in product-led growth, there are 3 phases. In acquisition, can the CFO add a lot of value using leading indicators? So revenue is a lagging indicator. Revenue I earned today is not from something I did yesterday or today. It is from something I could have even done as long as 3 years ago or 2 quarters ago. Lagging indicators are bad because they don't give us clarity on what to do next. The CFO is a data fluency specialist. In digital, a lot, and I'm doing a poll on LinkedIn right now, I'm asking people, who's in charge of bringing leading indicators to the C-suite on a weekly basis? And this is a trick question because McKinsey and Accenture have studied this. The C-suite is presented static dashboards. A lot of the metrics that are being captured are not leading indicators, they're lagging indicators. And if we sit the CFO, the Chief Product Officer, the Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Customer Experience or Client Servicing or Customer Service Officer in the same room, we can start to capture metrics that help us understand how effective we are at acquiring, how effective we are at engaging and retaining customers in the middle of what we call the funnel or flywheel, and then how effectively we're monetizing them. The CFO can say, look, it's not enough to be monetizing them. let's look at each segment and say, what is the cost of serving this segment? Because the average marketer doesn't have the data fluency to know what is the cost of service for this segment. He can only tell you the cost of acquisition, right? He can't tell you the cost of serving, the back-end cost, the staff cost, the human cost, the customer service costs. And if you just have that single view of marketing or that single view of product, you don't know payback periods. And payback periods are incredibly important. If you are not on track to having a payback period of 18 months or sooner for most of your core monetization within business, then the CFO can point that out and create a real-time dashboard and say, how can we get this user either price more, lower costs, or pursue a different core segment that we can then achieve payback within 18 months, because that's the name of the game. And if you can retain them for 18 months, that's great, and you've got retention. But it also means that you are now tracking engagement, so you have a leading indicator of that core action within your experience that is supposed to be predictive of retention. And then you can do what I call agile with enterprise robustness, which I've had to be doing for the past 4 years, because it's not easy as here's a business model canvas. They are leading indicators that are game changing. And you'll find that top quartile performance. We never talk about the top 20% of the industry the same way we talk about the remaining 80%. Yeah, the top 20%, they function differently, they do things differently, and they have a lot more data led rather than data informed in their business at all parts of the funnel, at all parts of the experience, and they're able to be agile and allocate resources, because there's never enough people, there's never enough time. So anything that you're doing that doesn't directly create retention, engagement, then retention, then monetization, is interfering with your path to product market fit and therefore business model, robustness.
Thanks. And I see Capital Jane, our CFO, up in the back there. This is what we'll be implementing going forward.
CMO's best friend.
And the CMO is just sitting there right next to him as well. So before we wrap up, we'll have one last question, and then we'll open up to questions in the audience. So I guess as growth as a system, what is one thing that you would like the audience to take away today? Perhaps Mark, you can start.
Think about your cost model for scaling early on, and don't lose sight of that.
I can see Mark definitely has a CFO background. But how time really flies fast. I think this panel went by pretty quickly. But I think the one thing I would take away is what we haven't addressed is really the maturity levels of the different types of firms we come across. So my one slogan is, done is better than perfect, or good is better than perfect. You don't need to have a perfect proposition or service out there. When Facebook came out, the version 1.0 website, it was a website, was very basic, but it worked, it was viral, it did the job, and they nailed what was supposed to be the client centricity proposition. So I think with any business, you have to try, iterate, and going back to the mantra, good is better than perfect.
One thing is 4 things. Product market fit is a lie. And let me contextualize that. There are 4 fits that you need on the way to 100 million in revenue. And that is the 4 fits that are unfortunately painfully dynamic. They are between your customer segment, your value proposition, the channel you acquire them, and your business model and your revenue. You change any one of those 4, the fits between all the rest change. Where you acquire them changes, how you can or should monetize them changes, etc. And that means that you should not leave positioning to an external agency. Positioning should be done at the C-suite, at the leadership level. It should be validated with engagement metrics. And you'd be surprised by how many go-to-market strategies are defined by an external vendor who will never have access to the corporate strategy, the business strategy that's built on that, and the product strategy that is built on that. And then positioning is done after the fact, and it cannot accurately capture the meaningful monetization or strategic KPIs that should be tracked, that are hopefully leading, that are determined at the C-suite. So don't outsource your positioning and make sure it's happening at the C-suite.
Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed the panel, lots of diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds. Perhaps we can open up for questions. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes.
Thanks. Just trying to understand the Franklin Templeton approach. So you say you're a corporate venture capital arm, right? And you're strategic, you're not financial in your investment approach. It's usually pretty centralized. So you're it's being driven out of Boston or New York or wherever. I mean, what are you guys doing in Asia, and what do you hope to achieve?
Well, sure. Thank you for letting me highlight some of our fintech innovation program. So this is actually, so I've been in Franklin Templeton for 8 years, and I used to lead the corporate strategy function out of San Mateo. So you are right, we are a very US-centric firm. 70% of our business is in the US, about 15% is in Asia. But we are very global, yet locally action-minded, right? So what we've done in Asia, in Singapore specifically, we launched our fintech incubator here in Asia. We opened it in February, launched it. Autum was actually, April was there, and the team was there to grace us with that launch in June. But the importance of, Jenny Johnson, when she came out to the Singapore FinTech Festival back in 2019, I think her eyes lit up when she saw the amount of buzz and activity in the Singapore ecosystem, but also representative of what's being done in Asia Pac. And I think you cannot run things from the US, from Boston or San Mateo or wherever. You have to have a local network and a local ecosystem. So what we do is actually, to get to your question, we invest in early stage fintech startups. So we have a partnership with F10 to incubate companies. We give 150,000 in seed funding and a 2-year runway to develop their model and their business propositions. That's very early stage, pre-Series A, pre-seed even type of companies. We then have a portfolio of fintech companies all the way up to the Series C round, so larger companies that we would invest in. But there we're much more strategic in terms of looking at their business plans and where the synergies lie for corporations, like for us as a corporate, because there we're more interested in either distribution partnerships or technology partnerships or some sort of product innovation roadmap. And in those larger instances, we would take much more of a fine-tuned approach to KPIs, understanding the 4 buckets that David, you outlined very clearly. But with the smaller companies, to my earlier point, you have to give them a little bit more runway. And these are ideas in a box. Sometimes 2 people come up with a great idea, need to build a team, and need to have 2 years of a runway to develop the program, so develop the proposition. So our thinking around acting locally while being global is also centered around the fact that we have to look at a wide spectrum of ideas to be able to tap into innovation truly, rather than waiting for these companies to grow big, and then by that time we've missed the boat.
Okay. Any other questions? Chetan.
I love the concluding last liners from everyone. Just a quick question. How do we best reconcile the fact that, sometimes it's just the management, the board, potential investors, even within the team itself, emphasizes and scrutinizes on lagging indicators that you mentioned, David, in terms of revenue, cost, and all that, instead of the predictive and leading ones? How do you best reconcile the fact?
Any takers? Okay, so certainly I made a point of coming from a specific angle today, but I think it has to be a balance. I think it is a function of what stage you're at as well. So if you are really day one, people are buying into the dream, into what it could achieve. I think you need to be careful that as you get bigger and start spending more, asking more of your investors, that's where you need to sort of make that shift. But you'll never totally reconcile, is probably the real answer.
I'm so glad you asked. So to avoid giving the 3-hour webcast that I have, yes, so let's say first there's a difference between a startup and a corporate venture, okay? Startups, let's leave that aside today, let's focus on corporate ventures. Corporate ventures have the latitude of a runway, right? Well-funded startups, also few and far in between, but they have the benefit of a runway. Within that runway, where are you disappointing the C-suite? Because what you're saying is that they're looking at revenue, right? You're not meeting targets or expectations that they have. You have to break that down. Are we failing at the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel? Top of the funnel means we are getting people to our website who are successful in only one half of traditionally what we call product market fit. We are able to acquire new users. Are we failing there? Then you say, is it a strategy problem? What are our strategy metrics and what are our execution metrics? So is it a strategy problem where we are focusing on the wrong value proposition? Or is it an execution problem? Our marketing agency, our targeting isn't doing its job. If expectations are being failed at the middle of the funnel, people are not signing up, people are not downloading the app. If they're downloading, they're not using. If they're not using, they're not staying around for, I would say, short, medium, and long-term retention is like, let's say, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year. Are we failing there in the middle of the funnel? What are the leading indicators there? And is it a problem of failing the handoff between top of funnel and middle of funnel? Or is it failure at the middle of the funnel and we are not providing value, or we're not helping customers discover value? I've worked with a bank that had more than 45 features in their, what they call their core user experience. And the issue with that is that you can't target 40 different customer segments. Marketing can't do that without Uber's marketing budget, right? And therefore, you have a problem of creating product market fit. You cannot define a core user experience. You cannot optimize a core user experience, which means that 95% of the people that you are paying to bring into this funnel are the wrong customer and cannot be fully satisfied because they're not your core user, right? So if I wear a suit and a tie and I go to McDonald's to pick up, breakfast, and then I meet the love of my life and she thinks I'm a bit odd because it's, I'm in the wrong outfit, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, the wrong pickup line, there's going to be no resonance and I'm not going to get a phone number. And acquisition or middle of funnel engagement are about that. And then bottom of funnel it's all about that. Is the problem that marketing is acquiring people that sales do not think are qualified leads. On the other hand, many companies are victims of their own success, and leadership complains that the leads that are being brought to sales would have converted anyway from the rest of the experience, and so sales isn't adding value. Otherwise, it's the other way around, and marketing is saying that sales isn't timely enough in responding to the lead, and so either one is blaming the other. And the answer is not who's right or wrong. The real answer is why they're not sitting together and making sure that they are both aligned to the same outcomes. Because in innovation failures, the biggest challenge is not that we're looking at lagging indicators, it's that we are applying incentives to our teams that are misaligned. So the biggest benefit is creating shared incentives and alignment within teams, and then the leading indicators will flow, and you're not so worried about lagging indicators because you can't align without leading indicators. So it's a trick answer.
I'm just wondering where you met your partner.
It wasn't at a McDonald's and I wasn't wearing a suit.
Glad to know it wasn't McDonald's.
I think we've got a question here, sorry, in the white shirt.
Thank you. Thank you for the panel. I have a question regarding the strategy, especially for big banks, about the corporate venture strategy. I know there might be not a single answer to it, but typically what happened in the bank, especially, should we do it ourselves? Should we invest in a startup? Or should we do a greenfield corporate venture, or to start venturing an entity to do it? So, in your opinion, what should be the best cut to answer this kind of question whenever we want to take a new product to the market? Thank you.
take that one.
I mean, look, I can provide a Standard Chartered perspective on that. Very clearly, when investing in third parties, there has to be an angle. It's either someone that the bank works with, a vendor, part of the ecosystem, and I think that's really important to keep some discipline, rigor, focus to the purpose of that investment. It's something to accelerate your core, defend your core, help someone in the bank who's trying to get something off the ground. On the venture building side, by definition, it's a little bit hard to know where a startup will end up. You may have a good idea, but in the process of building it will shift. So I think we found it's much harder to set any kind of firm mandate on you can or can't do this. It's a little bit more about what does our network, what does our standing in the world allow people to build. So hopefully that answers the question.
If I could, we're not a bank, but if I could just add on to that, I mean that the decision to build, whether a corporate venture arm or not, is really in the hands of often the board of the advisor of the company, right? So in our case, we do have an innovative and visionary board, I would say. It is pay time, so no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. In all seriousness, though, the board is responsible for setting the direction, as is the management team. So it depends on whether the management team, what is the objective that they're trying to achieve. If the objective is to be at the forefront of innovation, to be at the cutting edge of technology, and to be ahead of the competition, then you should absolutely build in-house and build venture capital opportunities for your employees and also for startups. If the goal is purely cost and maintaining a tight ship and ensuring that you are staying on top of trends, but not that you can capitalize on those trends in other ways, then that's also a fair way of going about it. But I think we took a look at both tangible and intangible benefits out of our steps forward. And the intangible benefits is also what the employees get, right? So if employees know you have a corporate innovation arm or you are doing things with startups and you're giving employees an opportunity to further their growth, there's an intangible benefit that is hard to measure, but is definitely there in some form.
Thanks, Chetan. I've been given the signal. We've got one last question.
Okay,
So,
I do
gentleman
a
over
quick
here.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some talk of, thank you for hosting this event first. Yeah, there's some talk of digitization effort, right, as a means to power growth within a corporation. So as an investor, I was wondering, how do what sort of metrics should I be looking at in order to determine an individual's company effort in terms of digitization? Right? For example, like StanChart versus the DBS Bank, right? How do I measure the effort they put into digitizing their effort? What sort of metrics should I be looking at? If you have such an answer. Thank you.
I think you're giving that one to me. I think as an investor, it's actually quite hard. A lot of those metrics are internal, and there's quite a lot of sort of picking and choosing as to what gets published. I think there is and it's ripe with those kind of vanity metrics. So one that I have seen a lot is great digital initiation metrics, digital client engagement, but then it's not digitally straight
So
through.
there's no industry benchmark or yardstick on which we can base on. Unlike ESG, there are so many. How about digitization?
I think
Zero the market?
you have to basically go sort of specialist area by area. Financial markets, retail, trade, etc. So deep research, I think, is the answer.
Can I just clarify, are you talking about private market investment for yourself or public market?
Public market.
Public market, I think it's a little bit easier. there is paid research you can access. For example, McKinsey's Design Institute has a tracker of financial performance as well, into two metrics. So overall market cap growth and returns to shareholder performance. And they have canvassed, I think today, 2 years ago it was already 1,500 companies. And they had something that ties to leading indicators, and that is how design oriented is the company, how customer centric is the company. And they say that if not causation, the results of this study and the performance of businesses with the highest performance has the highest causation that they've ever found in any of their behavioral research analysis studies. And it's very interesting because it means that on an extremely regular cadence, so before and after an idea is put together, after it is an MVP has been built, before and after it is tested, after that is before and after it's launched, that leadership gets access to understanding of product market fit, and then decides on various stage gates whether this proceeds or should investment should be doubled down in. And I think parts of that is publicly available and parts of that is paid.
And if I could just add from an asset and wealth management perspective, it's actually very easy to measure digitization. It's a $60 trillion asset and wealth management market globally. About 1 trillion of assets are digitized. And what I mean by that is assets that are on digital wealth platforms. And that's primarily in the US. Asia is far behind, as is Europe. So if you look at Endowus, Saif, Stashaway, DBS Digiportfolio, and soon to be Autum as well, in terms of measuring digitization, that channel of growth for us is as simple as measuring what are the assets on that channel, what's the experience clients are getting. So look at the glass half full, because it's only still about 1.5 trillion out of a 60 trillion potential market. So a lot of room left to grow.
Great insight. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, and thanks to the panel for joining me today. Really interesting insights, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thanks for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day.